My name is Rebecca Coleman. I'm 39, and I thought I had a stable marriage. I was wrong. Thomas and I have been together for 15 years, married for 12. We built everything slowly, brick by brick, like careful adults who believed in shared goals and long-term security. We bought our house during the housing crash, painted the walls ourselves, argued over kitchen tiles, and celebrated when we finally paid off the last renovation loan. I believed we were partners in every sense of the word, emotionally, financially, practically. At least, that's what I told myself. Thomas runs a small logistics company. I work in healthcare administration. I handled our savings, tracked expenses, planned vacations, and made sure our retirement accounts was steadily growing. We weren't flashy, but we were solid. Or so I thought. 2 months ago, he came home unusually quiet. He loosened his tie without looking at me and placed a thin folder on the kitchen counter between us. I remember the hum of the refrigerator sounding louder than usual. My hands were still wet from washing dishes. "We need to talk," he said. That sentence alone made my stomach tighten. He told me it was just paperwork. Something for business protection. He said his accountant recommended it. Then he said the words that made my pulse pound in my ears. "I think we should sign a post-nuptial agreement." After 12 years of marriage. I laughed at first. I actually laughed, because it sounded absurd. Post-nuptial agreements were for couples on the brink of divorce or billionaires preparing for disaster. We were neither. We were normal. We were fine. "Why now?" I asked. "It's just smart," he replied too quickly. "If anything ever happens with the business, I don't want you dragged into it." Dragged into it. The phrasing bothered me. Thomas had always said our future, our plans, our safety. Now it was his business and my protection, as if we stood on opposite sides of an invisible line. I opened the folder. Legal language. Asset separation. Protection clauses. The house listed under conditional ownership depending on liability claims. Our joint savings categorized in a way that felt suddenly fragile. My chest tightened as I scanned the pages. I felt like I was reading about strangers. "You don't trust me?" I asked quietly. "It's not about trust," he said, running a hand through his hair. "It's about responsibility." Responsibility. The word echoed in my mind long after the conversation ended. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to think this was practical, not personal. But something in his eyes that night felt distant. Calculated. And then I noticed something else. He wouldn't let me keep the folder. "I'll bring it back after the lawyer updates a few things," he said, sliding it away from me as if I were a child reaching for something sharp. That was the moment the anxiety truly began. Because partners don't hide paperwork. Partners don't rewrite the rules after 12 years. And as I stood alone in our kitchen that night, staring at the empty counter where the folder had been, I felt something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Unprotected. Something wasn't right. And I could feel it in my bones. 4 days after that conversation, Thomas acted overly normal. Too normal. He kissed me goodbye every morning, asked about my work meetings, even suggested we plan a weekend getaway. On the surface, nothing had changed. But beneath that polished routine, something felt rehearsed. I started noticing small things. He began taking phone calls outside. Not in an obvious way, not dramatically storming out of rooms. Just subtle. A quiet buzz, a glance at the screen. Then, "I'll be right back." The sliding door to the patio closing softly behind him. His voice low. Controlled. When I asked who it was, he answered quickly. "Client." Every time, a client. Thomas had never been secretive before. His business struggles, shipment delays, staffing headaches, he used to unload all of it at the dinner table. I was his sounding board. His strategist. His partner. Now I was excluded. One evening, while he showered, his laptop sat open on the dining table. I didn't plan to snoop. I truly didn't. But the screen lit up with a notification before it went dark. Past due notice. My heart skipped. I hesitated for a full minute, staring at the screen as if it might accuse me of betrayal. Then I moved closer. The mouse was still warm under my palm. The email subject line read, "Final warning before escalation." Escalation. I clicked. Lines of numbers blurred before my eyes. Outstanding balance. $38,000. Payment overdue for 90 days. Immediate action required. 38,000. My throat went dry. We didn't have that kind of unpaid balance. Not personally. Not that I knew of. I quickly checked the sender. A commercial equipment financing company. Why hadn't he told me? Footsteps echoed down the hallway. I slammed the laptop shut and stepped back just as the bathroom door opened. My pulse pounded so loudly I thought he could hear it. "You okay?" he asked, towel draped around his neck. "Yeah," I said too fast. "Just tired." That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake listening to his breathing beside me. Steady. Calm. As if nothing were unraveling. The next morning, I checked our joint account. Nothing unusual. Savings untouched. Mortgage paid. Utilities current. But when I opened the business account, an account I still technically had viewing access to, I felt the ground shift beneath me. Multiple short-term loans. High-interest lenders. Transfers between accounts that didn't make sense. Payments barely covering minimum obligations. He wasn't protecting me. He was protecting himself. And the post-nuptial agreement suddenly looked very different in my mind. Not like a shield for us, but like a firewall. A legal wall he was building to separate our assets before something collapsed. My chest tightened as realization crept in. He hadn't asked me to sign that document out of caution. He asked because something was already on fire. And I was only just beginning to smell the smoke. I needed proof. And I needed the truth. For the first time in our marriage, I didn't confront Thomas immediately. That scared me more than the debt itself. I had always been direct, sometimes even too blunt. But this felt different. This felt bigger than an argument about money. This felt like survival. The next few days, I watched him carefully. Not in a dramatic, suspicious way. Just observant. I paid attention to the pauses before he answered questions. To the way he avoided eye contact when I mentioned the business. To how quickly he changed the subject when I asked about new contracts. He was editing himself. One evening, while we were eating dinner, I said casually, "How's cash flow this quarter?" He froze for half a second. Barely noticeable. But I saw it. "It's fine," he replied, cutting his chicken too precisely. "Why?" No reason. Just curious. He nodded, but his jaw tightened. That night, I logged into the business account again. This time I went deeper. I downloaded transaction histories. I checked lender names. I searched for company registrations tied to his business. That's when I found it. A second line of credit. Personal guarantee signed solely by Thomas. Amount: $120,000. $120,000. My vision blurred. I had to sit down. The document was dated 8 months ago. 8 months of silence. 8 months of him sleeping beside me, making weekend plans, asking about repainting the guest room, while carrying a financial time bomb I knew nothing about. And then I noticed something else. The guarantor clause stated that in the event of default, personal assets could be pursued unless legally protected under spousal separation agreements. Spousal separation agreements. My stomach dropped. The post-nuptial agreement wasn't a precaution. It was a strategy. He wasn't asking me to sign to protect me from business risk. He was asking me to sign so creditors couldn't touch the house. So they couldn't touch our savings. So legally, everything could be framed as hers, while his liabilities burned alone. Except it wasn't protection. It was deception. Because if his business collapsed publicly, if lawsuits followed, if bankruptcy was filed, our life would still implode. Reputation. Stability. Security. Gone. And he had decided all of this without me. 12 years of partnership reduced to a unilateral decision. I felt heat rise in my chest, not panic this time, but anger. Slow. Steady. Controlled. He thought I wouldn't notice. He thought I would just sign. The next morning, he placed the updated folder on the counter again. I made a few adjustments, he said lightly. We should finalize this soon. I looked at him. Really looked at him. At the man I had defended in arguments. The man I had trusted with every financial password. The man I believed would never blindside me. Thomas, I said calmly, how bad is it? His smile faltered. I don't know what you mean. And in that moment, I realized something devastating. He wasn't just hiding debt. He was prepared to lie. He looked at me like I was overreacting. Like I was the problem. I don't know what you're talking about, Thomas repeated, his tone calm, almost patronizing. You're imagining worst-case scenarios. Worst-case scenarios. The phrase felt like an insult. As if $38,000 in overdue notices and a secret $120,000 credit line were just figments of my anxious imagination. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply held his gaze and said quietly, I saw the financing documents. Silence. It stretched between us, thick and heavy. I watched something shift in his expression, not guilt at first. Calculation. You went through my business files? He asked, his brows drawing together. There it was. Deflection. So there are files to go through, I replied evenly. He exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. Rebecca, you're blowing this out of proportion. Every business takes on debt. That's how growth works. Growth? My voice cracked despite my effort to stay steady. You're 90 days overdue on payments. His eyes flickered. Just for a second. You don't understand the full picture, he said. There are contracts coming in. Investors are negotiating. This is temporary. Temporary. 8 months of silence didn't feel temporary. Signing personal guarantees without telling your wife didn't feel temporary. Drafting a post-nuptial agreement to shield assets didn't feel temporary. It says creditors can pursue personal assets unless protected, I continued. That's why you want the agreement. His jaw tightened. I want the agreement so you're safe. Safe from what? I asked softly. That question hung in the air. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he paced toward the window, staring out at the yard we had landscaped together last summer. The patio furniture we picked out on sale. The small maple tree we planted as a joke about growing old here. I'm handling it, he said finally. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to stress you out. The words landed wrong. Not because they were cruel, but because they were dismissive. As if I were fragile. As if 12 years of shared responsibility meant nothing when things got difficult. You didn't tell me, I said slowly, because you didn't want me to stop you. That made him turn. You think I'm reckless? I think you made decisions that could cost us everything, I replied. His face hardened. Defensive now. I'm trying to save the company. Our income. Our future. Our future. The irony almost made me laugh. You don't get to gamble our house without telling me, I said, my voice low but firm. You don't get to rewrite our marriage contract because you're scared. That word hit him. Scared. For a split second, I saw it. Not arrogance. Not control. Fear. And that's when something else began to settle inside me. This wasn't just about debt. This was about power. He had decided that protecting his pride was more important than trusting me with the truth. He had decided I was someone to manage, not someone to stand beside him. And as he stood there, silent, avoiding my eyes, I realized something painful. The post-nuptial agreement wasn't the first betrayal. It was just the first one I could prove. I stopped arguing. And that frightened him. The moment I went quiet, something shifted. Thomas expected tears. He expected shouting. Maybe even emotional threats. What he didn't expect was calm. Because calm meant I was thinking. For the next week, I played the role of the reasonable wife. I asked neutral questions. I made dinner. I nodded when he talked about upcoming contracts and temporary liquidity issues. I even pretended to review the revised post-nuptial agreement without comment. Inside, I was building a plan. I scheduled a private consultation with a financial attorney during my lunch break. I didn't tell Thomas. I didn't ask for permission. I simply sent the documents I had downloaded and waited. When I sat across from the lawyer 2 days later, the fluorescent lighting made everything feel clinical. Cold. She read quietly, flipping pages with steady fingers. Then she looked at me. Did you know he personally guaranteed multiple high-risk loans? She asked. Yes. Did you know 2 of the lenders specialize in distressed businesses on the brink of insolvency? No. My stomach dropped. She continued, if he defaults, they can pursue assets aggressively. The post-nuptial agreement would protect you legally, but it could also indicate prior knowledge if creditors investigate timing. Prior knowledge. The words echoed. If I sign this, I asked slowly, could it look like I was helping him shield assets? She didn't answer immediately. That hesitation told me enough. It depends on how it's structured, she said carefully. But yes. In some cases, transfers made close to insolvency can be challenged. I felt heat rise in my face. Not shame. Anger. He wasn't just asking me to protect myself. He was asking me to help him rearrange the house while it was burning. Do you believe his business will recover? She asked gently. I thought about his late-night pacing. The evasive answers. The overdue notices. The desperate tone masked as confidence. I don't know, I whispered. When I got home that evening, Thomas was in the kitchen reviewing something on his phone. He looked up and smiled, as if everything were normal. Did you look over the agreement? He asked casually. I placed my purse down carefully. I did, I replied. And? I met his eyes. I won't sign it. The smile disappeared. Rebecca, this isn't emotional. It's practical. No, I said evenly. It's strategic. For you. His expression darkened. You think I'm trying to screw you over? I didn't flinch. I think you're trying to save yourself. The silence that followed was different this time. He wasn't calculating. He wasn't deflecting. He was cornered. And for the first time in weeks, I wasn't the one feeling afraid. He didn't yell. He calculated. Thomas leaned back slowly, studying me in a way that felt unfamiliar. Not like a husband. Like an opponent assessing risk. You're making a mistake, he said evenly. If this goes wrong, you'll wish you had signed. The subtle threat landed exactly how he intended. If what goes wrong? I asked. He hesitated. Just enough. There's volatility in the market. Contracts can fall through. Lawsuits happen. I'm trying to minimize exposure. Exposure. He spoke like a press release. I folded my arms. How much exposure, Thomas? His jaw flexed. You don't need exact numbers. That answer told me everything. I do, I said quietly. Because if this affects our house, our savings, our credit, I absolutely need exact numbers. He stood up abruptly, pacing now. This is why I didn't tell you. You spiral. Spiral. There it was again. The narrative. I was emotional. Reactive. Unable to handle pressure. Except I wasn't spiraling. I was analyzing. Did you use our savings as collateral? I asked. No. Did you move money from our joint account? No. Did you sign anything that could legally involve me? Silence. He didn't answer right away. And that silence felt louder than any confession. Thomas, I said carefully, what did you sign? He rubbed his forehead. There was a restructuring agreement. Temporary. Standard procedure. With who? A private lender. Name. He exhaled sharply. You wouldn't know them. Try me, I thought. That night, after he went to bed, I searched the lender's name using fragments I'd overheard during his calls. What I found made my hands go cold. Predatory litigation history. Aggressive asset seizure cases. Multiple small businesses forced into bankruptcy within a year of refinancing. This wasn't growth capital. It was desperation money. And then I saw something else. One of the public filings listed a conditional clause requiring spousal acknowledgement in certain liability scenarios. Spousal acknowledgement. My pulse pounded. If he had already signed something involving me without consent, this wasn't just financial betrayal. It was legal exposure. The next morning, before he woke up, I printed every document I had found. I placed them neatly inside a folder of my own. When he walked into the kitchen, I was already dressed. "Where are you going?" he asked. "To protect myself," I replied. And for the first time, I saw something crack. Not his confidence. His control. I didn't go to work that morning. I went to war. The attorney's office felt different this time. Less clinical. More urgent. I placed the printed documents on her desk without speaking. She read carefully, her expression tightening with every page. "This clause," she said finally, tapping the paper, "is problematic." "Problematic how?" I asked. "It allows the lender to pursue joint marital assets if it can be demonstrated that both spouses benefited from the capital infusion." Benefited. The word made my stomach twist. "I didn't benefit," I said. "I didn't even know." She nodded slowly. "That may be true. But if funds were used to maintain mortgage payments, household expenses, or shared investments, an argument could be made." An argument. Legal language always sounds so neutral. So harmless. But I heard what it meant. They could come for our house. "Did he list you anywhere?" I asked. She scanned again. "There's no forged signature." "That's good. But he declared marital income projections that include your salary." My pulse thudded in my ears. He used my income? As part of a financial stability presentation, yes. Without asking me. Without warning me. I felt something inside me harden. "What are my options?" I asked. She leaned back. "First, do not sign the postnuptial agreement yet. Second, separate your finances immediately. Third, document everything. Separate." The word landed heavy. Not emotionally. Legally. Would filing for legal separation protect me? I asked carefully. She paused. "In many cases, yes. It creates a financial boundary from that date forward." A boundary. I drove home in silence, the steering wheel cold under my fingers. The maple tree in our yard looked different when I pulled into the driveway. Less symbolic. More fragile. When I walked inside, Thomas was on a call. His voice sharp. Irritated. "I told you we're restructuring," he snapped. "We're not in default." Not yet, I thought. He ended the call when he saw me. "Everything okay?" he asked cautiously. "Yes," I said evenly. I spoke to a lawyer. The air shifted instantly. "You did what?" I needed clarity. His face flushed red. "So now you're lawyering up against me?" "Against you." There it was again. "Not with you. Not for us. Against." "I'm protecting myself," I said. "Just like you are." He stared at me as if he didn't recognize me. "You're overreacting," he muttered. "No," I replied calmly. "I'm responding." Silence filled the kitchen again. But this time it wasn't heavy with fear. It was heavy with consequences. And for the first time since this began, I understood something clearly. If he was willing to gamble our future without me, I was willing to redraw the line without him. He tried to regain control. But something had already shifted. That night, Thomas was unusually attentive. He poured me a glass of wine without asking. He asked about my day. He even reached for my hand across the dinner table, like we were some version of ourselves from years ago. It almost worked. Almost. Rebecca, he began softly, we don't need to escalate this. Escalate. As if I were the one lighting fires. I'm not escalating, I replied calmly. I'm responding to information you chose not to share. His fingers tightened slightly around the stem of his glass. I didn't tell you because I was trying to fix it, he said. I didn't want you to panic. Stop saying that, I said quietly. Saying what? That I panic. That I spiral. That I can't handle reality. He looked startled, like the script had changed and he hadn't rehearsed this part. I was protecting you, he insisted. No, I said, my voice steady. You were protecting your image. That hit. His expression hardened. You think this is about ego? I think you couldn't stand the idea of failing in front of me. The silence that followed wasn't defensive this time. It was wounded. For a moment, I saw something roar in his eyes. Shame, maybe. Or fear so deep it had turned into denial. You don't understand what it's like, he muttered. Employees depend on me. Investors. If this collapses. If this collapses, I interrupted, we collapse. That word hung between us. We. You already involved my income in your projections, I continued. You made me part of this without consent. I didn't have a choice, he snapped. There's always a choice, I replied. His phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, then quickly flipped it face down. That tiny movement felt louder than shouting. Who is it? I asked. Just work. Let me see. His eyes flashed. You don't trust me now? Trust. The irony almost made me laugh. You asked me to sign legal documents without full disclosure, I said evenly. Trust isn't automatic anymore. He stood abruptly, chair scraping against the floor. This is exactly why I didn't tell you. He shouted. You turn everything into an interrogation. The outburst startled me, but not because of the volume. Because of the fear underneath it. What aren't you telling me? I asked quietly. He froze. And in that stillness, I felt it. There was something bigger. Bigger than debt. Bigger than restructuring. And for the first time, a new possibility entered my mind. What if the loans weren't the only secret? I didn't sleep that night. Not because of the argument. Because of the pause. That split second when I asked, what aren't you telling me? And Thomas didn't answer. Silence can be louder than confession. At 2:14 a.m., his phone lit up on the nightstand. He thought I was asleep. I kept my breathing slow and steady, the way you do when you're pretending. The screen glowed in the dark. A name appeared. Lehner. No last name. Just Lehner. My stomach tightened. He didn't let it ring long. He grabbed the phone quickly and slipped out of bed, closing the bedroom door behind him. That door had never felt symbolic before. Now it felt deliberate. I waited 5 seconds. Then 10. Then I got up. I didn't storm down the hallway. I didn't confront him. I stood still. And I listened. His voice was low, urgent. I told you not to call this late. A pause. No, she doesn't know. Another pause. I'll handle it. Handle what? My pulse was steady. Too steady. Like my body had switched into survival mode. Floorboards creaked beneath my feet as I stepped closer. I didn't want to hear. But I needed to. I said I'll transfer it, he whispered sharply. Just give me 2 days. Transfer. My mind raced through possibilities. Investor? Lawyer? Accountant? Or something else? Stop pressuring me, he added. You're the one who said it was temporary. Temporary. The word landed like a stone. Temporary what? Loan? Arrangement? Relationship? He ended the call abruptly. I stepped back into the bedroom before he returned. When he slid into bed, I kept my eyes closed. He lay rigid beside me. Not touching. Not breathing deeply. Just awake. Waiting. The next morning, he acted normal. Too normal. He made coffee. Kissed my forehead. Mentioned a meeting downtown. Big one, he said. With who? I asked lightly. Just a potential partner. I held his gaze. Laner. He blinked. Just once. But it was enough. Why would you assume that? He asked carefully. I heard the call. The air shifted. You were listening. You were hiding. He exhaled sharply. She's an old consultant. That's all. Consultants don't call at 2 in the morning asking for transfers. His jaw tightened. You're reaching, Rebecca. Maybe. Or maybe I was finally seeing clearly. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. It was about who he became when he thought I wasn't looking. And for the first time in our marriage, I was looking. I didn't confront him that morning. Not fully. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I checked our accounts. Not the shared dashboard he showed me. The detailed statements. The archived folders. The business-linked transfers he once told me were too technical to worry about. For years, I trusted the summaries. Now I wanted the truth beneath them. It took 20 minutes to find the first transfer. $18,500. 3 weeks ago. Recipient: L. Kessler Consulting. My chest tightened. Laner. Kessler. Consulting. I kept scrolling. $12,000. $9,750. $22,000. All marked as short-term strategic liquidity. Strategic. The language almost made me laugh. It sounded polished. Harmless. It wasn't harmless. The total over 4 months? $147,300. I sat back in my chair. This wasn't temporary support. This was dependency. My phone buzzed. A calendar reminder. Dinner with investors, Confirm. Dinner. Investors. I didn't put that on the calendar. He did. And suddenly something clicked. He wasn't just hiding debt. He was performing stability. For someone. I opened the business registration database online. L. Kessler Consulting wasn't just a contractor. It was newly formed. Registered 6 months ago. Managing member. Lehner Marie Kessler. And listed beneath her name, co-signing financial guarantor. Thomas Avery. My vision blurred for a second. Guarantor. Not client. Not investor. Guarantor. He hadn't just borrowed money. He had backed hers. With ours. There it was. The real risk. If her company failed, we paid. If she defaulted, we paid. If she disappeared, we paid. Every mortgage payment. Every savings account. Every future plan. On the line. My hands felt strangely calm as I took screenshots. Saved files. Forwarded documents to my personal email. Not our shared one. Mine. I wasn't spiraling. I was documenting. The door opened downstairs. He was home earlier than expected. Rebecca? He called. I closed the laptop slowly. Yes? He appeared in the doorway of my office. Smiling. Carefully. Good news, he said. The deal's almost secured. Which one? I asked. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second. The restructuring. I held his gaze. Or Lehner's company? Silence. Not confusion. Recognition. How much are you guaranteeing for her? I asked quietly. He didn't answer immediately. That told me everything. This isn't what you think, he said at last. I nodded slowly. You're right, I replied. It's worse. I felt the weight of the house settle differently that morning. Every wall, every corner, every memory seemed to echo the truth I had uncovered. Thomas tried to act normal. Brewed coffee. Played soft music. Smiled at me like we were still partners in a story we used to share. But I wasn't in that story anymore. I sat at the kitchen table, laptop open, legal documents stacked beside me. My hands were steady. My mind was clear. We need to talk, I said calmly. He stiffened. About what? Everything. All of it. The loans. The guarantees. The transfers. Lehner. His jaw flexed. I can explain. No, I interrupted. Not now. First, I want full transparency. Every file. Every email. Every transfer. No exceptions. His shoulders sagged slightly. Relief, maybe. Or fear. Or resignation. I couldn't tell which. I'll gather everything, he muttered. It'll take time. Time is exactly what I don't have, I replied. And neither does our financial security. He nodded. The room was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and my own steady breath. For the first time, I realized I wasn't just reacting. I was setting boundaries. Drawing lines that could not be crossed. Thomas could no longer manipulate the narrative by omission. I had a voice. I had proof. I had control, enough to survive, enough to reclaim our future, whatever that might look like. I reached for my phone. Texted my attorney. Prepare for immediate review. No delays. He watched, expression unreadable, as I organized the evidence into a single folder. Everything neat. Everything undeniable. This wasn't about confrontation anymore. It was about survival, and I was ready. I decided it was time to act. No more waiting. No more passive observation. First, I separated our finances. Every account, every card, every investment moved to my personal control. Not a word to Thomas. Not yet. Next, I organized the evidence. Screenshots, statements, emails, all labeled, time-stamped, and backed up in multiple locations. I even created a secure offline folder. My pulse was calm, but my mind raced with every possible scenario. I contacted my attorney. Explained everything. We need a preemptive plan, I said. I want boundaries in place before any signatures are put down. And I want immediate protection for my assets. The lawyer agreed. You're doing the right thing. Fast action is critical here. Documented proof plus separation gives you leverage if negotiations fail. I drafted a clear timeline of every suspicious transaction. Every call, every meeting, every unexplained transfer. Thomas thought he could manipulate by omission. I turned omission into transparency. Then came the hardest part. Confrontation. Not angry shouting. Not accusations. Calm, precise statements of fact. Thomas, I said, we need to restructure everything. Not just business. Not just finances. Our marriage too. Transparency starts now. He froze. I could see the flicker of fear. A crack in his armor. I want legal separation of assets immediately, I continued. And I want to review every business and personal transaction. I need to know the truth about Laner, and any other obligations you've hidden. He opened his mouth, then closed it. No words. Just acknowledgement. I felt the power shift. Not with cruelty, but with clarity. I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was reclaiming our future, setting rules that could not be ignored, and finally defining my terms. And in that moment, I realized this was my turning point. My empowerment. My boundary. My fight. The days that followed were tense but controlled. Every interaction with Thomas was measured, deliberate, purposeful. He tried to slip back into old patterns, small omissions, vague answers, subtle distractions, but I had changed. I didn't argue. I observed. I documented. I responded strategically. I arranged meetings with our accountant, our attorney, and financial advisors. Every conversation now included evidence, timelines, and precise questions. No assumptions. No trust without verification. Thomas realized quickly that the game had changed. He could no longer hide behind charm or excuses. I held the power of information, of clarity, of transparency. Then came the ultimate moment. The confrontation about Laner's company. I presented the evidence, calmly, precisely. The transfers. The guarantees. The undisclosed meetings. Every detail was laid bare. He tried to justify, to explain, to soften the truth, but the facts were undeniable. I didn't seek revenge. I sought resolution. Accountability. Boundaries. Safety. He finally nodded, acknowledging the impact of his choices. Not out of remorse, but of recognition. From that moment, things shifted. I gained control of our shared finances. I reclaimed my autonomy. I defined what could and could not happen moving forward. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't easy. But it was real. I realized something profound. Betrayal can't erase your strength. Secrets can't diminish your clarity. And no one can manipulate you if you insist on truth. By the time the week ended, Thomas and I had established clear terms. Boundaries enforced. Future safeguarded. And I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. I had survived deception, uncovered hidden truths, and emerged empowered. This was my victory, not over him, but for myself.